Thanks for joining me here on Conversations for Yoga Teachers. I'm your host, Karen Fabian, the founder of Bare Bones Yoga. I'm an experienced registered yoga teacher with over 15 years of teaching experience, a certified personal trainer, and an entrepreneur. My mission is this: to help you develop into a purpose-driven, confident yoga teacher, one who truly understands anatomy and how to share it clearly and confidently so that you can help your students learn and, as a result, grow your impact and connection. I strongly support and value the uniqueness of all individuals and provide a safe community where diversity is embraced. Through my mentorship and signature program called the Blueprint Learning Program, I help yoga teachers build their skills in the area of learning anatomy, and along with that, help them learn important business skills and personal development ways of being that will transform them into purpose-driven teachers who make a big impact. On the podcast here, you'll get a blend of both anatomy learning, stories from teachers, interviews with others in the field, and a dose of personal development. For more information and to get on the wait list for any of my programs, see my website, barebonesyoga.com. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations for Yoga Teachers. I am your host, Karen Fabian, and this is episode 96. We are inching closer to 100 episodes of this podcast. Amazing. So I'm recording this on Monday, September 28th, and tomorrow is my 56th birthday too. And today is my dad's birthday. So first of all, I have to give a huge shout out to my father, who is one of the greatest teachers ever. As much as I've had a few great teachers in my yoga training path, no one can hold a candle to my dad. He has taught me the value of working hard, but at the same time, the value of sticking to a plan and building good habits in your work efforts, even if the results are not what you expect. I didn't really understand this at first. In fact, I used to get frustrated when I would try something in my yoga business and I wouldn't get the results I wanted. My father taught me that it's more about building a process, taking the small steps towards the big steps, and building the habit of doing the work. It was finally through understanding this that I was able to keep moving forward even when things didn't turn out the way I wanted them to. I'd change or tweak a little part of the plan and try again, without drama, without blaming anyone or deflecting to outside forces. He always encourages me to keep taking steps forward, and that's the most important part, almost more important than the outcome you get. His favorite way to end an email to me is straight ahead, and that is the truth. So with my birthday being tomorrow, September 29th, it's hard not to get a little nostalgic. And at the same time, it's also hard to not fall into a bit of melancholy, because who wants to have a birthday in the middle of this pandemic? Although, having said that, what gives me faith is that just as the sun will rise each day, babies will be born, and birthdays will be had, and all of what's going on around us can't stop that. And that's what's giving me faith. Now, all of this is the perfect backdrop to the topic I'm going to cover today, and that's neuroscience. Now, before you stop listening because you want to talk about anatomy, you did hear that science is in the word, right? And what could be more central to anatomy than science? Plus, neuro is the prefix, and hello, how can we move our limbs without the neurological connection between our muscles and our nervous system? So this topic is extremely relevant. Now, the other aspect, though, of neuroscience has to do with the brain's impact on our thoughts and perceptions, and yes, our actions as well. I find this to be extremely relevant when it comes to yoga teachers and the task of learning anatomy, because much of what I've found when it comes to the challenges teachers face when they're learning anatomy falls not into the academic, but more into one of mindset. This means that it's not that they can't learn anatomy like they think is the barrier. It's that they have a certain way of perceiving what learning anatomy is going to be like. And that's what's often tripping them up. Further, just like I said and was saying before, it's not that they don't want to learn it so that they can blend it into their cues and sequences. It's that they often fall off track with learning it because things get in their way, and instead of getting those big results they dreamed of, they're frustrated over the smaller ones, don't appreciate the small wins that come from following a process, and as a result, they drop out. Do you know that I have people that spend money on my signature program, the Blueprint Learning Program, and they never finish it? In fact, the rate of people completing online courses that they buy is quite low. Now, why is that? It's because it requires a step-by-step process that you need to stick with. And for many people, they're motivated at the start, but then that motivation wanes and they just give up. Now, I don't want that to be you. And if you're listening and you actually are one of the teachers enrolled in the Blueprint Learning Program and you're finding it hard to keep at it, this episode is definitely for you. However, this episode is also for anyone out there, teachers who want to learn anatomy, who lack confidence and aren't sure how to approach it. And the other thing is, a lot of what we'll be talking about applies to life. It's funny how this ends up happening. Many of the themes that I'm going to share that relate specifically to teaching really apply to life as well. So what I'll be covering today are a few concepts in neuroscience, and I'll bet that as I get into them, you're going to have some light bulb moments where you say, that's me, I felt that, or I've said that, or I've looked at something in a particular way, just like you're describing now. And just having that noticing that we as yoga teachers would describe as mindfulness in yoga, although here it's part of the uncovering from our automatic responses to a more mindful understanding of the reality that's happening. That is where the true realization and opportunity for change lies. Now, I want you to think about something you've wanted to do as a teacher. We're going to do a little exercise here. Let's say you want to learn anatomy. You've got the sense that you have a gap in what you know about the body, and you're thinking that it's the reason why you're unable to share cues effectively and clearly. Let's say you try studying on your own, and that's not working. You follow some people on YouTube, maybe even me, and that's not helping. So you feel stuck. This is a scenario, that feeling stuck, that I want you to remember as we talk more. Now, why does talking about neuroscience matter? Because if we want to make gains as people, set goals and achieve them, we've got to learn to uncover our unconscious ways that are set up to set us back. We've got to uncover the hidden ways we operate, the hidden ways that we sabotage ourselves. And these things are hidden until we bring them to the surface so that we can start to move forward on things that our logical mind knows we want to do, but yet we still seem unable to complete. Now, what I'm going to share with you here are a few concepts in neuroscience. This is a place to start. I'll also refer you to a fabulous book called NLP, The Essential Guide by Tom Huber as a great reference and the source of much of this conversation. In the book, the process of NLP is described as the process of human thought. It's the study of what's happening when we think something. It describes how the mind, using your brain, makes sense to you in terms of what's happening in the world. Now, we know that there are many times when what we experience is quite different from what others experience, even in the same situation. To take an example from teaching, imagine the class you teach where you think the class sucked. And then people leave and they say, wow, that was such a good class. And you're left standing there wondering, did they take the same class that I just taught? That's a great example of how your mind, using your brain, interpreted the class, and since your mind and the mind of your student are different, the experience between the two of you was totally different. So now that we've just defined NLP, let me share a few concepts with you. The first concept is called the well-formed outcome. This is a concept that asks you to fully define what you want to do and to think it through so that you'll have a really exact idea of when you've achieved it. It's perfect for the kinds of learning goals that yoga teachers set, especially because saying, I want to learn anatomy is really quite vague. So a well-formed outcome asks a few really specific questions. And if you're listening and can take notes, this would definitely be a good thing to write down. The well-formed outcome asks, what specifically do you want? How will you know when you got it? With whom do you want the result? What stops you from having the desired outcome right now? What resources will you need? How are you going to get there? So I'm going to repeat those if you're writing. A well-formed outcome asks, what specifically do you want? How will you know when you got it? With whom do you want the result? What stops you from having the desired outcome right now? What resources will you need? And how are you going to get there? Now, I want you to think about if you, let's say you had a chance to work at a studio that at face value seemed like a totally awesome opportunity. So you take the job without going through the WFO framework, well-framed outcome framework. Fast forward 3 months in and you realize the commute is too long, the teachers and you just don't gel, and the style of yoga is not what you enjoy teaching. This is an example of moving on with a goal without first running it through this framework. I also want you to think about when you say, I don't have confidence when I teach. This is a feeling, which is definitely good to notice. Now, can you go deeper and define if you had more confidence? What would that look like? What would you be doing, saying, and what words would you use? When you run the goal of having more confidence through a well-formed outcome framework, you start to get really specific about what that skill looks like. And once you define that, you have a much more educated approach to what kinds of training you should take. The next concept I want to share with you is the feeling of being stuck and its associated action, procrastinating. I'll bet when I say procrastinating, that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, or at least maybe makes you feel a little uncomfortable if that's become your mode of operating. This comes up for a lot of yoga teachers, especially those that want to learn more and they enroll in programs they never finish. I recently took a 5-day training and at the end, I had to take an exam to get the credits. I was hell-bent on taking the exam on the day after the training was done, even though the teacher hosting the training said the videos would be up for a number of weeks. Now, why? Because I knew in my head, if I waited, I'd never take the exam and I'd never get the credit. Most of all, though, I'd never test my knowledge and know that I learned what I set out to learn, hence, well-formed outcome. Now, am I most people? Nope. Most people would take the training, watch most of the sessions on replay, not show up live, and never take the test. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I've heard this kind of phenomenon mentioned before, especially because in my work to build effective online learning programs, I'm part of an entrepreneurial group that builds online learning programs in many different areas, and they all say the same thing. One of their biggest struggles as program creators is getting their students to finish. And these are people who spent money on these programs. Now, so of course, it's a huge part of what I want to understand because I want teachers who invest in my program to graduate. So this idea of procrastination usually has the person focusing on feeling stuck. Well, what Mr. Hubar writes about is that that feeling of being stuck is way too late. What you really need to look at is what is happening before that feeling came up, because that's where the answer to the mystery lies in terms of why you're putting it off in the first place. So I'll give you an example. What if you feel like you can't learn anatomy? You've tried before, you've bought courses, you've gone to training, and you just feel like the information never sticks. So you sign up for just one more program, and you're really gung-ho at the beginning. You go through a few modules, but then you start to feel that same feeling of not being smart enough. You start to have those feelings of memories from grade school and how you didn't pass science, and you let those feelings overtake your motivation to get this new course done. But you're not aware all of this is happening behind the scenes. All you know is you feel stuck. If someone were to ask you, why didn't you finish that course? You would probably just say, I feel stuck. The last NLP concept I want to share with you is what Tom Hubar calls the curiosity shunt installation. It's based on the idea that being curious about something is way more positive and a much more positive experience than beating yourself up about what you don't know. I think about this a lot when I teach the anatomy portion of different studios' 200-hour trainings. And every time I start a session, especially when I teach it over several sessions, I'll check in with the teachers. I'll say, how are you doing? And the teachers lament over how much stuff there is to learn. They'll always say things like, oh, there's so much. Oh, I'm overwhelmed. Oh, I don't know how I'm going to get through all of this. For years, I've been hearing the same thing. Now, in part, I recognize that that's part of the way the trainings are set up. And that is an unfortunate common refrain that does directly lead back to how we have set up trainings for yoga teachers. However, when that comes up, I always share a reframe with them. Instead of, there's so much to learn, how about, I'm super curious to find out more about how muscles work in poses. When will we get to that part? So just from that simple shift of saying how overwhelmed you are to tapping into the curiosity, the natural curiosity that's there, that can bring a lightness. And with that lightness, you have the renewed energy to go and address the learning. So this is a shorter podcast. We've only been on for about 20 minutes or so, although I think that the concepts I shared can potentially be really impactful. And I want to, before I wrap up, highlight one particular thing that the well-formed outcome brought up. And if you remember in the well-formed outcome, one of the questions is, what stops you from having the desired outcome right now? And that can be a really important thing for teachers to think about, because if you're feeling like you want to get to a particular place in your teaching, a particular way of being, you want to teach in a particular way, you want to feel a particular way when you teach, ask yourself that question: what's stopping me from feeling confident right now? And that can be a powerful way to identify what's holding you back. And then again, once you identify what's holding you back clearly, it's going to give you a much better way to figure out and identify what can help you change your situation in a positive direction. So, as I said, I'm recording this on September 28th, 2020. Now, given some of what's happening in my life and my podcast producer's life, this probably won't go live until September 30th. That means you're probably going to listen on the 30th or October 1st. And what I want to tell you is all of this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I am hosting a free training in my Facebook group. Now, even if you listen to this podcast on September 30th, October 1st, or October 2nd, you're still going to be able to see those trainings. All you need to do is register for the training on my website, barebonesyoga.com. Go to the events page, register for the training. It'll give you the details of each day, the topics I cover each day, and the time of the trainings. Now, the time obviously won't matter as much if you're watching them all on the replay. The important thing that I want you to know, and it actually ties in great with this topic here, is that following these 3 trainings, and by follow, I mean if you're watching them on the replay, watching these free trainings one after the other, day 1, day 2, day 3, is going to give you an illustration of the 3 skills I hear most about that yoga teachers want to build. How to cue with anatomy in mind, how to sequence with anatomy themes, and how to answer students' questions confidently. And then on day 4, which is October 1st, because I know most of the teachers that watch these trainings are going to say to themselves, this all sounds great, Karen. I just don't know enough anatomy to be able to use these skills or demonstrate these skills. So what I'm doing on day 4 is I'm opening enrollment to my signature course, the Blueprint Learning Program. So when you register for the training and you watch the 3 days, on day 4, which is October 1st, you'll be able to find out more about the Blueprint Learning Program. If you go through even the steps that are here in today's episode, the well-formed outcome, you may decide that learning more about anatomy is going to help you reach the outcome of building those skills. And my program, the Blueprint Learning Program, is a step-by-step process to learn anatomy. It's a wonderful way, stress-free, to go through an organized process, not a choose your own adventure process, which most teachers do in self-study. Instead, it's an organized step-by-step way to learn anatomy. So if you listen on October 1st or October 2nd, those are the days that enrollment will be open. After that, enrollment will close. So October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, Saturday, October 3rd, is the last day you'll be able to enroll in the program. The best place to start is to just take advantage of the free training, guys, right? I'm doing these free trainings for free in my Facebook group so that anyone can benefit from the free training. And then for those who are ready, for those who identify that they've got an interest in learning more about anatomy so that they can develop those skills, all the details on how to enroll in my program will be available on the 1st. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I really thank you for listening. If you've made it to this far in the podcast episode, it means you've stuck through it for the whole thing. So I really want to acknowledge you for doing that. I always personally listen to all of a podcast unless I don't find I'm connecting with the content. And I really like when the podcast host acknowledges me for sticking with it. It makes me feel connected to them even though we're not in the same room. So I acknowledge you, if you're still listening, for sticking with it. And I'll bet that means some of this is resonating with you. And I'd love to know more about what it is. So send me an email, post a comment on my social media, send me a DM on Instagram, let me know. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope to see you in the free training. I hope to hear from you, and I'll see you or talk to you on the next episode of Conversations for Yoga Teachers. Namaste. Thank you so much for listening to Conversations for Yoga Teachers. I am your host, Karen Fabian, and I just want to remind you, if you would like to get on the wait list for my 2 premier programs, the Blueprint Learning Program and my mentorship program, all you need to do is visit my website, barebonesyoga.com, and the links to get on the wait list for both of these programs are right on the homepage. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.